Something is moving in the dark water. 9 meters long, close to a ton of weight, its entire head sealed inside a helmet of solid bone, its eyes looking out through a bony ring, like a knight behind a visor. It opens its mouth. There are no teeth in there. Not one. What comes down instead is a pair of bony blades grown straight out of its skull, grinding themselves razor sharp every single time they close. And they go through an armored fish the way scissors go through paper. This animal is 400 million years old. It was hunting the open ocean 150 million years before the first dinosaur drew breath. It was already an apex predator before this planet had grown a single tree. Its name is Dunkleosteus. Well, ask someone to name a prehistoric sea monster, and they will say Megalodon, maybe Mosasaurus. Almost nobody says Dunkleosteus. And that is a genuine shame, because it came before all of them. It was the original, the first true giant killer of the open ocean, tens of millions of years before sharks would ever take that crown. But here's the part that should bother you. Almost everything you have ever seen of this creature, every illustration, every documentary reconstruction, the image sitting in your head right now, is partly a guess. We have its head. We have it in extraordinary detail, plate by plate, blade by blade. We do not have its body. For more than a century, scientists have been arguing about what the rest of this animal actually looked like. And that argument is still running today. In the last few years, a new analysis suggested the classic shape we have all been shown may be wrong. Not slightly wrong. Wrong in a way that changes the entire animal. I'm going to show you the fossils, the bite force numbers, and exactly where that argument stands right now. But to understand why the first monster of the ocean is still half a mystery, you have to start with the world it ruled. And it was nothing like the ocean, you know. Rewind the clock 400 million years to a chapter of Earth's history that geologists call the Devonian. There are no whales here, no seals, no dolphins, no sharks worth fearing yet. The land is barely alive, just moss and the first low creeping plants clinging to the muddy edges of the water. There's no grass anywhere on this planet, no flowers. The continents are bare rock and a thin green smear at the water's edge. The first insects are only beginning to appear, small and uncertain, testing a world that doesn't belong to them yet. Almost everything that matters on this planet is still happening in the ocean. And the ocean, in this age, belongs entirely to fish. So completely, so overwhelmingly, that scientists gave this whole period a nickname, the Age of Fishes. But these aren't the fish you know. This is an alien cast of characters. There are jawless fish that filter the mud like living vacuum cleaners, older than jaws themselves. There are lobe-finned fish, slow and patient, whose distant descendants will one day crawl onto land and eventually become us. And then there are the Placoderms. The Placoderms were the tanks of the ancient sea. They wore armor, thick, heavy plates of solid bone covering their heads and shoulders, locked together like the plating on a battleship. Some were small, no bigger than your hand, darting between rocks. Others grew into monsters. For nearly 70 million years, this armored dynasty spread into every ocean basin on the planet, and nothing could challenge them for the throne. And Dunkleosteus was the largest and most powerful placoderm that ever lived, the king of the armored fish, the apex of an already dominant group. Now put real numbers on the animal I showed you at the start, up to 9 meters long, around 30 feet, weighing as much as a ton and quite possibly more. The front third of its body sealed inside a helmet and shoulder shield of solid bone. A head shaped like a battering ram, built to take impacts that would kill almost anything else in the water. water. Here's something worth holding on to, because it's the key to the mystery we'll come back to later. Almost everything we know about Dunkleosteus comes from that armored front end, the head, because that's the part built from bone, and bone is what survives. The rest of the animal is a different story entirely. When paleontologists first pulled those massive skull plates out of the rock, one feature stopped them cold: the jaws. There was not a single tooth anywhere in that enormous mouth. What it carried instead were two pairs of enormous bony blades, self-sharpening edges built directly into the skull itself. And every single time it closed its mouth, those blades slid past one another and ground themselves razor sharp. It swam through that ocean, carrying a pair of shearing scissors that never, ever went dull. Which raises an obvious question. Just how hard could a mouth like that actually bite? Hard enough that researchers built a working mechanical model of the jaw purely to measure it. And when the numbers came back, they were higher than almost anyone had dared to guess. I'll show you exactly how that bite compares to a great white shark, and to you, in just a few minutes. But first, how do you even hunt when you're this big, this armored, and this heavy? The answer is not what you'd expect. Before we get to the hunt itself, you need to understand something about the world Dunkleosteus was born into. It was not a peaceful one. The Devonian Ocean was, in many ways, an arms race with no ceasefire. Every Placoderm species that survived did so because it had found some new answer to the same brutal question: how do you avoid becoming someone else's meal in a world full of armored killers? Some species answered with speed, growing slim and torpedo-shaped, built to simply outrun trouble. Others answered with thicker and thicker armor, layer after layer of bone, hoping to become too tough to bite through. Some flattened out almost into rays, built to hug the seafloor and vanish into the silt whenever danger passed overhead. Others grew long, spike-like projections from their plating, turning their own bodies into something too dangerous to swallow. Entire branches of the Placoderm family tree can be read as different solutions to the exact same problem: survive or be replaced. And into that arms race, Dunkleosteus introduced something new. It didn't just get bigger, it got smarter about killing. While other placoderms were investing everything in defense, Dunkleosteus was investing in offense, in jaws that didn't just bite, but sliced, and a hunting method built for one purpose: ending an armored opponent's life in a single decisive strike. This mattered, because Dunkleosteus wasn't only hunting the soft, unarmored fish of its world. The fossil record strongly suggests its favorite prey may have been other placoderms, other tanks wrapped in the same kind of bone that had, until Dunkleosteus arrived, kept them safe from almost everything. Imagine being an armored fish in this ocean. For millions of years, your family's strategy has worked: grow the armor, survive. And then something shows up that doesn't care how thick your shell is, because it isn't trying to bite through it. It's trying to cut through it, the way scissors cut through cloth. Your greatest advantage, the thing that has kept your bloodline alive for generation after generation, simply stops mattering. That is what it meant to share an ocean with Dunkleosteus. Not just danger, a complete rewriting of the rules that every other species had spent millions of years learning to survive by. So how does an animal this heavy actually catch anything? The answer is the fastest bite in the ancient ocean. Being covered in bone comes with a price. Armor is heavy, and heavy usually means slow. So Dunkleosteus almost certainly wasn't a long-distance chaser, running prey down across open water. It didn't need to be. It relied on something else entirely, one weapon that almost nothing else in its world could match: the speed of its bite. Here's what made it so lethal. Most fish open their mouths in a simple way. They drop the lower jaw, and that's the whole motion. Dunkleosteus did something far more sophisticated. It could snap its head backward and drop its jaw at the very same instant, throwing its entire mouth open in a fraction of a second. And when a mouth that large opens that fast, it creates a sudden, violent drop in pressure, a vacuum. Water rushes in to fill the space, and anything floating in front of that mouth gets pulled along with it, whether it wants to go or not. Scientists have a name for this: suction feeding. The prey isn't so much bitten as it is inhaled, pulled helplessly into the jaws before it even understands what's happening to it. And this was fast. When researchers modeled the mechanics, they estimated Dunkleosteus could open its mouth in as little as 1/50th of a second, faster than you can blink. One moment, a smaller fish is swimming along, minding its own business. The next, the water itself has betrayed it, and it's already gone. Then the blades came down. Now back to that bite force question. When researchers reconstructed the jaw and calculated the forces involved, they found something staggering. At the very tips of those bony blades, where all that power concentrated onto a narrow cutting edge, Dunkleosteus could generate pressures running into the thousands of pounds per square inch. That is not just enough to catch prey. That is enough to cut straight through armor. Enough to slice another Placoderm cleanly in two. Let that sink in for a second. This animal's favorite meal may well have been the other tanks of the Devonian Sea, and it went through them like they were made of paper. To put that power in perspective, think of a great white shark, one of the most formidable predators alive in our oceans today. The great white bites with tremendous, well-documented force. And Dunkleosteus was operating in that same league, or beyond it, 400 million years earlier, long before sharks had risen to any real prominence. As for a human bite, it wouldn't even register on the same chart. And we're not simply guessing about how it fed. We have direct evidence. Paleontologists have discovered fossilized lumps called boluses of half-digested fish bone and scale that Dunkleosteus regurgitated after a meal. Think about what that actually means. We have found the leftovers of its dinners, preserved in stone for 400 million years. This was no scavenger, picking its scraps along the sea floor. This was an active, dominant hunter, sitting comfortably at the very top of its food web. There's even evidence that Dunkleosteus sometimes turned on its own kind. Some fossils show bite marks that match the jaws of another Dunkleosteus. Cannibalism, 400 million years before anything resembling a human walked this earth. In a world this brutal, sometimes the only thing large enough to threaten the king was another king. And Dunkleosteus sat on that throne for a very, very long time. But that brings us right back to the question we opened with. If we know this much about how it lived, how it hunted, even what it ate, then why on earth are scientists still arguing about what most of its body actually looked like? Here's the problem I promised you at the start, and it's a genuinely strange one. That magnificent bony head, the plates, the jaws, the armor, fossilized beautifully. We have skulls preserved in remarkable detail. But the rest of Dunkleosteus, everything behind the shoulders, that part of the skeleton wasn't made of bone at all. It was made of cartilage. The same soft, flexible material that shapes your ears and the tip of your nose. And cartilage almost never survives the fossilization process. It doesn't mineralize the way bone does. It rots, it collapses, it vanishes without leaving a trace. So across 400 million years, the soft rear half of nearly every Dunkleosteus that ever lived simply disappeared from the record as if it had never existed at all, which left scientists in a bizarre situation. For over a century, we had the front end of one of history's greatest predators, and almost nothing behind it. Imagine uncovering the head and shoulders of a magnificent statue and having to guess at the entire rest of the figure buried beneath the sand. That was the challenge paleontologists faced. So they guessed. And this is the part that tends to surprise people. Every dramatic image you have ever seen of a complete Dunkleosteus, every illustration, every documentary reconstruction involved a significant amount of educated guesswork for the body. And what did the earliest researchers reach for to fill in that blank? The most fearsome ocean predator they already knew and understood: the shark. For decades, Dunkleosteus was reconstructed with a long, muscular, shark-like body and a big, sweeping tail, sleek, streamlined, built like a submarine. It became the classic, iconic image, quite possibly the one sitting in your head right now. There was just one problem with that picture. It might be entirely wrong. In recent years, researchers went back to basics. They took the one thing we do have in abundance, those skull plates, and measured them with real precision. Then they compared the proportions to other, more completely preserved placoderms, species where scientists can actually observe how head size relates to overall body length. All analysis, and the numbers told a very different story. According to this newer analysis, Dunkleosteus may not have been the long, torpedo-shaped hunter that generations of illustrators had imagined. Instead, its body may have been far shorter and bulkier than assumed, stubbier, more compact, built less like a sleek shark and more like a heavyweight boxer. A dense slab of muscle and armor rather than a streamlined missile built purely for speed. Now, and this matters, this remains an open, unresolved debate. Science does not have a final, settled answer here, and there's no honest reason to pretend otherwise. Some researchers strongly defend the classic long-bodied shape. The argument continues, and new fossils could tip it in either direction. But honestly, that's exactly what makes Dunkleosteus so fascinating to think about. We are talking about one of the most powerful predators in the entire history of life on this planet. And we are still, right now, in the middle of figuring out its true shape, one fragment of bone at a time. Think about how remarkable that is. An animal this dominant, this important, this genuinely terrifying, and most of its body remains, to this day, a 400-million-year-old mystery we haven't fully solved. But every reign, no matter how absolute it feels while it lasts, eventually comes to an end. And the reign of the armored kings, Dunkleosteus included, was about to run out of time in the most dramatic way imaginable. Around 359 million years ago, the Devonian period came to a close, and it did not go quietly. The planet was struck by one of the great mass extinction events in its entire history, a prolonged, brutal crisis that hammered life in the oceans especially hard. This wasn't a single catastrophic day. It was a slow-motion disaster unfolding across a vast stretch of time. In many parts of the world, the seas lost their oxygen, collapsing into vast dead zones where almost nothing could survive to breathe. Food chains buckled from the bottom up, and everything built on top of them buckled with them. And the Placoderms, the armored dynasty that had ruled the seas for nearly 70 million years, could not survive it. Every last species vanished, the entire group wiped from the face of the earth forever. Dunkleosteus among them. The tanks of the Devonian were gone. The very armor that had made them unstoppable for so long could not save them from a world that was changing faster than evolution could answer. But here's the thing about extinction. It is never only an ending. Every single time the dominant players are swept off the board, a door swings open for something new. Because in the empty space the Placoderms left behind, in the ecological throne they no longer occupied, another group of fish began, quietly, to rise. A group that had spent millions of years living in the shadow of the armored giants. These fish had made a completely different evolutionary bet. Instead of heavy bone, they invested in lightweight cartilage. Instead of armor, they invested in speed, flexibility, and stealth. You already know their descendants. Sharks. The animals we think of today as the timeless ultimate rulers of the ocean only truly got their opportunity after the armored kings had already fallen. Sharks did not defeat Dunkleosteus in some grand evolutionary battle. They did not outcompete it while it still reigned. Dunkleosteus came first. It ruled an ocean that sharks would only inherit tens of millions of years later, once the armored dynasty had already cleared the stage for good. So the next time you picture the most frightening thing in the sea, that classic pointed silhouette, that mouth full of teeth, remember this. Long, long before that shape ever existed, a bus-sized fish, sheathed entirely in bone, was already doing the exact same job, ruling the exact same throne, and doing it with a pair of self-sharpening blades instead of a single tooth. The shark is the predator we remember. It was never the first. Step back for a moment and take in the whole picture. 400 million years ago, on a planet you would barely recognize as your own. No forests, no dinosaurs, no birdsong, no voices of any kind. A sky with almost nothing flying through it. The ocean produced a killer that didn't need teeth. An animal that grew its weapons directly out of its own skull. That inhaled its prey whole. That cut clean through armored fish as if they were nothing at all. And that sat unchallenged at the very top of its world for millions upon millions of years. Dunkleosteus was not some minor footnote waiting patiently for the real predators to arrive. It was the real predator, the first of its kind. The original apex hunter of the open ocean, the blueprint that every great sea monster that came after it, sharks and mosasaurus and megalodon all included, would spend the next 400 million years trying to live up to. And here is the most haunting part of all. We are still meeting it, right now, in the present day. Every new fossil pulled from the rock, every new study published, redraws another line of that missing body, sharpens another piece of the picture we've been assembling for over a century. The armored king is still, quite literally, surfacing out of the stone one fragment at a time, 400 million years after it last drew water through those enormous jaws. Think about the Placoderms as a whole for a moment. 70 million years of dominance. An entire dynasty, an entire evolutionary experiment in armor and power that rose, ruled absolutely, and then vanished so completely that most people alive today have never even heard the word. And at the very top of that vanished dynasty, for longer than almost anything else in that ocean, sat one animal. Consider everything that had to be true for this creature to exist at all. An ocean stable enough and dangerous enough to demand a weapon like that self-sharpening jaw. A world of armored rivals, each one pushing the others toward greater and greater extremes, until one lineage finally produced something that could end the arms race entirely, at least for a while. Millions of years of evolutionary pressure distilled into a single, perfect killing machine. That is not a small thing. That is not a footnote in the story of this planet's oceans. That is one of the great success stories in the entire history of life on Earth. and it belongs to an animal most people cannot even name. The ocean had a monster long before it ever had a shark. A monster clad in bone, faceless in the dark water. Older than the dinosaurs, older than the forests, older than almost anything that has ever hunted on this earth. Its name was Dunkleosteus. And now, finally, you know it. If this animal changed the way you think about the ancient ocean, then you are going to want to see what else has ruled these waters across the last 500 million years. Because Dunkleosteus is only the very beginning of that story. In our last video, we asked a simple question. What would actually happen if two of the ocean's deadliest predators ever crossed paths, Mosasaurus and Megalodon? The answers surprised a lot of people, and it connects to this video in a way you might not expect. Both of those animals lived in oceans that Dunkleosteus, in a very real sense, helped make possible. If you haven't watched it yet, it's right here on screen. There is an entire hidden history sitting at the bottom of the ocean, waiting to be told properly. Armored kings, missing bodies, dynasties that rose in complete silence and vanished long before anything with a memory was around to witness them. Every one of those stories is sitting in the rock right now, waiting for the next fossil, the next fragment, the next piece of the puzzle to surface. We intend to keep telling that history, one lost monster at a time, accurately, carefully, and with the same honesty about what we don't yet know as what we do. Subscribe to Primeval Blue and join us for the next descent into deep time. The oceans before us. We'll see you in the deep.